Hey, everybody. How you doing? Welcome. It's Shadow at Night for Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. On the show tonight, we have no news yet from Universal Ostrich Farm. If you're wondering about that, nothing has happened as of yet. It could happen anytime. We suspect it'll happen in the middle of the night, the wee hours of the morning, although we don't know exactly what day. And again, it could happen in the middle of the afternoon as well. What we do know from a tip-off is that there are at least 100 RCMP officers mobilizing from detachments in Vancouver and Surrey and possibly headed towards Universal Ostrich Farm even as we speak. There are lookouts posted along Monashee Highway just in case. Just to give the family warning, there is no armed, violent resistance. I want to make that absolutely clear. I've got a lot of messages today from people who watched last night's show. Katie was on the show last night, and they're saying, it's time for a stand. It's time to take a stand. It's time for OCA 2025. And look at that time is not right now. What we need right now, more than anything, this is a different kind of a war we're fighting, you guys. It's not 1995 anymore. It's not 1945 anymore. This is a completely different kind of war we're fighting. We're going to go and check that out a little bit later on in the show tonight. But this is a war for hearts and minds. This is an informational war. This is who can get the most information, correct information out there. And then there is the emotional side of it. I'm sorry to have to say that, but there is the emotional side of it. There will be people out there who support the ostrich farm simply because they don't want to see 400 ostriches, healthy ostriches, killed. And I can totally understand that. They have no idea, the normies, exactly what this is all a part of. Maybe one day they'll find out. Somebody like Katie did. Katie had no idea up until January. And then she hoovered that information in once she woke up. I think she told that story a few months ago on the show. It's quite an interesting one. You know, everybody's got their story, right? And it's always kind of like that scene from Doctor Strange, floating in air for a few seconds or what feels like a year. And then you finally come out and go, oh my God. And I've been sitting there just not seeing this. And after a couple of days of obligatorily kicking yourself in your ass, you start diving down rabbit holes. That's just the way it goes. Tonight, Mark Carney. I've got all kinds of information. This is going to be a catch-up show, you guys, because we had Katie on last night, and we were off for 4 days before that over the Labor Day long weekend, so we're going to catch up on some stuff. Doug Ford poured out a bottle of Crown Royal. Publicity stunt, virtue signal, whatever it was, he did it on camera, and we've got that. Why did he do it is the question. We'll get to that. Mark Carney is taking credit for the already existing deal with the United States. He's also talking about somehow finding efficiencies in government because it's grown too fast. It's grown at twice the rate of inflation. Pierre Poilievre has laid out the conservative agenda for the fall sitting of Parliament. All that and more is coming up tonight on the Shadow at Night live stream, which is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Today we're comparing Crest toothpaste to SilverSuticals toothpaste. First, we're starting out with Crest. It's a classic, it's an original. It's what I've used most of my life. But that being said, it does have its problems. First off, the consistency is so weird and thick, and I get it's a paste, but it really doesn't spread that well. And I must also say that I'm not in love with the taste. I get toothpaste isn't supposed to taste good, but why shouldn't it? But that being said, it does get the job done. Next, we have SilverSuticals. They have 3 flavors, but today we're going with Bubbleberry. And already it smells so good. So I'm excited to see what this tastes like. The consistency is also a lot smoother, and I must say it spreads way nicer in your mouth.
This literally tastes like fruit bubblegum.
Yeah, this toothpaste was pretty good. I actually went in for seconds, and it's infused with nano silver, so it helps remineralize your teeth and keep them fresh throughout the day.
100% go with SilverSuticals.
And here's the results. What's your favorite toothpaste?
Well, it's obviously CanadaNanoSilver.com. CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, those 3 toothpaste flavors. You got the cinnamon, you got the spearmint, you got the bubbleberry for the kids. You want to keep that out of their reach because they'll use it all up in one day. Brush your teeth. You keep yelling at your kids and your grandkids, brush your teeth. And now they're going to want to do it like 12 times a day because of that bubbleberry. Check it out. CanadaNanoSilver.com. Hellos tonight. First, we go to Rumble. Susie Q57 is watching from Corbeil, Ontario. Moore Jof. I haven't seen you before. Welcome, Moore Jof in Red Deer, Alberta. Hello, Linda Jack watching in Calgary. Branded Witch is watching tonight. Robin and Eva, hello, in Walkerton, Ontario. Louis DeVute in Seaforth, Ontario. Hello, who else is here? Dyson's watching in Winnipeg. Hello, Cosford in Wellesley, Ontario. Hello, Esky Dogs. Hello, Pie Master 15. Saskatchewan Pork is watching. What? Nana Sue is here tonight. Arnie 7, Vilma, the whole gang. Notable, all you guys. White Grub 12 watching on Rumble tonight. Who's watching on Facebook and YouTube and all the others? Nancy is here watching from Cape Breton. Hello, Nancy on Facebook. Kathy is watching tonight in the Fox Warren, Manitoba area. Hello, Jeff watching in YouTube. Mary and Larry and Bella, Derek, Kathy, Shelley, Paul, Kelly, all you guys, Carla watching in Calgary. No matter where you happen to be tonight, no matter what platform you were watching on, please get this out there, you guys. I know that at its peak during the live part of this show, and a lot of people watch tomorrow morning or over the weekend, they'll do a lot of binging and they catch up on all of the news on the weekend. But for the live portion of it, when I ask you guys to like and share, I'm serious about this. We need to get this information out to as many people as we possibly can. And one of the biggest problems that our community seems to still be facing, which is a frustration, is fear. People are scared that if they share this show or shows like it, that people are going to see, their friends on Facebook are going to see, or their friends on YouTube or X or whatever, they're going to see, and they're going to think that you're a conspiracy theorist, and they won't like you anymore. It's too late for that. We've gone too far. As you'll see on the show tonight, we've gone too far. And the only way to get back some kind of semblance of normality or normalcy or whatever word you want to use for it, I like normality, is to get the word out and to show people with facts exactly what they're doing, and then get them to piece it together. And once you show them all the pieces of the puzzle and you kind of push them in the direction they need to go, they'll find out on their own. And really, all you need to do, if you're a normie, is read a little bit, just a little bit, about Agenda 2030, the UN, and Mark Carney's book, Values. That's it. That's all. Once you find out about those two things, everything else branches out from there. And then you'll see what's going on with Universal Ostrich Farm. And then they'll see what's going on with smart cities, 15-minute cities. And then they'll see what's going on with what used to be called the Wildlands Project. And how it all fits into place. AI, transhumanism. Why is biotechnical convergence on the Government of Canada website? Some people can go, oh, that's just nothing. Excuse me? It's on the government's website. Why is it on there? Why is digital ID on the Government of Canada website, or any provincial website for that matter? Why is digital currency on the Government of Canada's website and the Bank of Canada's website as well? They're slowly but surely bringing it in, and then the normalization period, and then it'll be voluntary, and then it'll just be mandatory, because nobody uses cash anymore. We don't need cash anymore. We're going to get rid of it. Think of all the money we'll save with the mint. Oh my God, billions of dollars. We don't need it. And the normies will go, oh yeah, we don't need it. And then suddenly everything is digital. It's the way it's going with cash right now. You ask any cashier, I'm sorry to get off on this tangent, but as long as I'm on it, you ask any cashier anywhere you go, just ask them, how many people pay with cash anymore? They'll probably tell you, I don't know. It's pretty rare. Can you give me a percentage? Yeah, I don't know, 5-10% maybe. When you throw a 20 at a cashier, wherever the cashier happens to be these days, check out the look on their face. It's confusion, surprise, even shock in some cases. What? Money? Some of them don't even know how to count the change. Quite literally, these are the new immigrants. These are the temporary residents that Pierre Poilievre is about to talk about. You'll see in just a second. So that's where we're going. And that's why I ask you to share. And again, I've probably already gone too far in that little soliloquy I just delivered in the last 2 or 3 minutes. People, the normies out there, they're going to go, this guy's nuts. But when you see all of the evidence placed in front of you, you can piece it together. And then they'll go back to this whole thing that I just talked about and went, oh, I need to know more. That's why I ask you guys to get this out there. Pierre Poilievre set the fall agenda for the Conservative Party in the House of Commons. The first session starts in a couple of weeks. And here's what he had to say. I've edited this down, by the way. It was originally 23 minutes. I think this is about 4 minutes now. Let's watch.
Behind us, some very talented and hardworking people who cannot get jobs here in Canada. And let's be honest, young people today form what I call Generation Screwed. Let's look at the situation for this generation. It is the first generation that cannot afford a home in Canadian history. And now, the double gut punch. They have the highest or the worst employment numbers of any group of young people since the late 1990s. So you can't get a job, and even if you did have a job, you can never buy a home after 10 years of Liberal government. The Liberals doubled housing costs. They unleashed crime and chaos in our communities with their soft laws. They broke our immigration system by allowing too many, too fast, too easily to come into the country. And they have destroyed our economy by pushing investment out of our country. Now, Mark Carney promised that he would be different. He has been worse than Justin Trudeau in almost every objective measurement. Let's go through the promises. He promised to build, baby, build. Well, far from doubling home building as he promised, home building is expected to drop by 13%, according to his own housing agency. As for major national projects, 5 months in, and there's not a single national project that Mr. Carney has even identified, much less permitted, much less having shovels in the ground. Not one pipeline, not one mine, not one major expansion of a port. All we have is meetings, offices, new bureaucracies, new high-paid big shots with big salaries who have thus far achieved absolutely nothing. Crime continues to rage on our streets, with Mr. Carney keeping in place all of the catch-and-release Liberal laws. And Mr. Carney has kept all of Justin Trudeau's immigration numbers, which means the system gets worse and worse and worse. Nearly 75% of temporary foreign workers that come into the country are for low-wage positions, which means they compete with working-class and young people that ultimately drive down wages and drive away jobs. Tim Hortons has hired an unimaginable 1,131% more temporary foreign workers in the last 4 years. In the first half of this year alone, the TFW program has imported 74% more low-skilled labor than in all of 2015. That's why Conservatives are calling on the Carney government to permanently scrap the temporary foreign worker program and to stop issuing visas for any new temporary foreign workers coming into the country. Mark Carney is a self-described global elite, and he and his global elite friends believe in mass immigration that gives more power to corporate elites like him and less wages to the Canadian people. Well, in most cases, I don't think they do need temporary foreign workers. I think they hire them because they can pay them less. And it's that simple. They don't want to pay the prevailing wage to the Canadian worker. And so they hire someone from abroad who might be in a desperate situation and willing to take less. And we see it again. Michelle Rempel has been tweeting out these job postings. I think it was it Booster Juice, the one you came out with yesterday? $36 an hour. They're Booster Juice offering $36 an hour to a temporary foreign worker. They specifically say they want it to be a temporary foreign worker. Why aren't they offering those jobs to Canadian kids first? And I'm not now speaking about any particular employer, but we know that there's a lot of abuse in this system where the employers are asking for some of the wage back from their worker. I'm not alleging that for Booster Juice, but it is happening out there.
Oh, kickbacks. That's why it's happening. Now, why is it that Pierre Poilievre only ever goes so far in his description of Mark Carney? We know who and what Mark Carney is. So Pierre Poilievre will go as far as to say Mark Carney, self-described global elite, but he doesn't go into detail about who he is, even though it's out there for the world to see. It's in his book, Values. Is it too big a hill to climb, Pierre, to communicate all of this? Is it too expensive? Do you just not have the will? Or is it that you're captured, and if you go too far with certain types of information, the gray suits in the back room are going to come and get you, and they're going to reveal something about you? Remember, we talked about this last week, I think it was. There's people in power who are held hostage through extortion, or they love the money, or they're in on it. And I get the feeling that Poilievre is one of those who is being held hostage. They've got something on him and he can't talk. I don't think he's in on it. I don't think he likes it, but there's nothing he can do about it. Remember, these politicians, even the world leaders, even the elite politicians of the world are only middle management as far as who really runs the world is concerned, right? Mark Carney is even middle management. Here he is talking about the deal with the U.S. and how Canada's deal with the U.S. is and always has been the best in the world.
Last time that you exchanged messages or you spoke to the U.S. president, and it's been 4 months that you've been texts, messages.
It sounds like you're my teacher and I've been caught.
And it's been 4 months since you've been in government. How much longer do Canadians have to wait to see results from those talks with the U.S. president?
Okay, well, let's go to results. Right now, we have the best trade deal of any country in the world. Okay, those are results. We think it can be better, and we're working to make it better, but to be absolutely clear, 85% of our trade with the United States is tariff-free. Nobody else is in that position. Our average tariff is about 5.5%. That's the lowest average tariff of any country in the world. So right now we have the best, but we have real issues. Without question, we have real issues in steel, in aluminum, in forest products, in autos, potentially in pharma, copper, some other sectors. So there's these strategic sectors that the U.S. has focused on where we have issues. And as well, there will be a review of CUSMA, our trade agreement with the U.S. and Mexico, starting next year. So we need to prepare for that. We need to lay the groundwork for that review, and we need to address as rapidly as possible these strategic sectors. Okay? So that's the overall context. So we're looking now, given that we've got the best deal, to really focus in on those strategic sectors and prepare the groundwork for that broader discussion on CUSMA. That's what we're doing. I last spoke...
We already have the best deal. Elbows up, completely unnecessary. Even now, Doug Ford continues to virtue signal with the whole Crown Royal story, which we're going to get into in just a second. Let's continue with Carney here.
Exchange messages. I last spoke to the president Monday evening. I spoke at length on a wide range of issues, including on trade, but geopolitical, other issues, labor issues, etc. It was a good conversation. We have a team, a very senior team. The clerk of the Privy Council is there in Washington as we speak, that is meeting with the U.S. counterparts. Don't expect immediate white smoke on one of these strategic sectors, but that's the type of conversation that we're having and will continue to have. as well, and this is a government that can do more than one thing at one time, as well as advancing those discussions in Europe and in Asia as we diversify our trade partners.
All talk, no action, at least so far. But he is talking about reducing the size of government. So all of those federal employees who voted Liberal in the last election, in the last 10 elections, let's be honest, are now suddenly at risk of losing their jobs because Mark Carney is suddenly looking for efficiencies.
Growing spending as a whole at over 7% a year on average for over a decade. That's twice the rate of growth of the economy on average. It's not a sustainable situation. So we need to rein in spending. We need to find efficiencies. We're in the process of finding efficiencies. One of the big elements of the discussions over the next 2 days will be about those efficiencies. It won't be the final discussion of that. We'll continue to work on this right up to the budget. So we need to do that. But at the same time, we need to invest as a country. And it's finding those efficiencies. It's the responsible thing to do with Canadians' money. This is Canadians' money. It's not the government's money. It's a responsible thing to do with that. But in finding those efficiencies, we create the room for these big investments. And the key to our strategy for investing, whether it's Build Canada Homes or these major projects, I can give you other examples, but look at those two, because you'll be hearing more about both of those in the coming weeks, is that the federal government, sometimes working with the provinces, but government, there's a bit of measures to catalyze investment, to catalyze enormous private investment. And that's how we get the big multipliers, and that's how we're going to give ourselves more than anyone else can take away.
Excuse me, wasn't it something like $500 billion? No, it's not that much. 30 billion? Billions of dollars in investment has left Canada and gone to the United States. And our second quarter, our economy actually shrunk by 1.2%, and the American economy grew by 3.1%. Okay, this whole First Nations thing with the graves, the Kamloops, the residential schools, the flags flying at half-mast, and all of that stuff that we've had to endure. Canada's somehow genocidal country. For the past, 8 years now? Commission for missing and murdered women, Aboriginal women that did absolutely zero, that cost hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. Well, there's another story that's come out. Let's have a look here. It's obviously on CBC. Residential school survivor remembers the principal forcing him to run 80 kilometers in a blizzard. Here's the guy. Residential school survivor. This is the kind of story that our dads used to tell us, remember? When we were growing up because we complained. It's too cold. I used to walk to school in bare feet over broken glass through 5 feet of snow in a blizzard with wind blowing at 80 miles an hour. Then you're talking about a little bit of snow. Now, we knew he was full of crap. But when we were 8, we bought the story. This guy expects us to believe that the principal of his residential school forced him to run 80 kilometers, 50 miles in a blizzard. This time, Charlie Bittern wasn't running from the cruelty of one man and the oppression of a brutal system. This time, he was running to heal. Bittern is a residential school victim and survivor. In the documentary, Bimi Batu Win, Where I Ran, he recounts in vivid detail how in November of 1967, a residential school principal forced him to run 80 kilometers through a blizzard as punishment for boyish horseplay. 80 kilometers in a blizzard. I'm sorry, but that would kill you. That would kill anybody. Even the most fit human being on the planet would not be able to do that. Lungs burning, legs weak. He eventually collapsed. He'd been running for hours. You know how long a marathon is? 26 miles. For more than 50 years, Bittern didn't tell anyone what happened that night because he hadn't thought of the lie yet. This comes from Jaime.substack.com, Real Indigenous Report. Does the release of the final report of the 8-year investigation into BC Indian residential schools by the RCMP's Native Indian Residential Schools Task Force confirm that the RCMP found no evidence of murders or clandestine burials? Yes. Yes, it does. The report of the RCMP's 8-year investigation finally released last week through the efforts of the Investigative Journalism Foundation. Notice no coverage in the left-wing corporate media at all about this because they're more interested in telling folk tales. Does the release into this 8-year investigation confirm the RCMP found no evidence of murders or clandestine burials? It does. The release of the report should be a cause for jubilation through Canada as it confirms the RCMP indeed found no evidence of murders or clandestine burials at residential schools in BC, and the horrific claims made in recent years by BC Indian bands, they can be discounted, particularly the false claim made by the Kamloops Band May 27, 2021, that it had discovered the remains of 215 children, and there have been more since then, recent ones. During its investigation of the Kamloops Indian Residential School, the RCMP heard nothing about murders or unmarked burials, and given the size of the student body, received only a relatively small number of other complaints, most of them merely referrals from the band's civil lawyers. From the page 75 of this report, this was one of the largest residential schools in BC with a student enrollment of over 400 pupils between 1952 and the late 1960s. Despite the size of the student body, the number of complaints received was relatively small. Only 79 complainants came forward throughout the entire 8-year investigation. Of these, a large number were referred to the task force via their civil lawyers. The RCMP's findings with respect to murders and clandestine burials province-wide are even more stunning. Only 2 allegations of murders were received, which the RCMP investigators found to be baseless and derived from the conspiracy theories of Kevin Annett, and only 1 allegation of clandestine burials was received at Cooper Island, now Penalacoot Island, which excavation by the RCMP proved to be unsubstantiated. From pages 47, 48 of the RCMP report. One of the more controversial allegations is that made by former United Church minister Kevin Annett, in which he claims Reverend Caldwell pushed a young girl down a set of stairs at the Alberni Indian Residential School, resulting in her death and its subsequent cover-up. An extensive investigation was undertaken, which ultimately proved that the alleged victim, 14-year-old Maisie Shaw, died in Port Alberni Hospital from acute rheumatic pericarditis, a heart ailment that ran in her family following an 8-day hospitalization. Another allegation, also reported by Annette, is the case of 14-year-old Albert Gray, who was allegedly beaten to death for stealing a prune at Ahusat Indian Residential School in 1939 or 1940. Investigators were unable to find any record of this individual despite an exhaustive search. This included the lack of any death certificate with the BC Department of Vital Statistics. We know he did exist, as interviews with surviving family members confirmed that Albert Gray did, in fact, die sometime around 1940, several months after leaving the residential school, and that the cause of death was either pneumonia or tuberculosis. Both of these investigations were complicated by the fact these incidents happened over 60 years ago, with very few records still in existence from that era, combined with the fact that almost everyone involved is now dead. But the stories remain. Baby deaths. One allegation mentioned at a few of the schools involved infant deaths. These complaints usually took the form of nuns or students giving birth to stillborns, which were subsequently buried in unmarked graves located somewhere on the school property. One such allegation was more involved In this case, the complainant stated that a baby was deliberately killed minutes after a nun gave birth, and that this baby was subsequently buried in the school basement. One of the more bizarre allegations even included claims that a baby was sacrificed in the woods at yet another school late at night as part of a satanic ritual. No evidence was found to substantiate either of these allegations. Rumors of dead babies being buried at the Cooper Island Indian Residential School have been circulating for years, and it generated considerable discussion. The task force decided to put this matter to rest and traveled to Cooper Island on February 24th, 1999, with the band's permission, they dug up a small portion of the island, which had been identified as one of the burial grounds. The contractors dug down to a depth of approximately 4 feet, at which time they encountered undisturbed soil. No evidence that would support any of these allegations was found. However, it must be pointed out that the soil in this area was wet, and forensic experts have all agreed this type of soil would have been destroyed or would have destroyed any human infant remains years and years ago. There is thus nothing in the RCMP report to substantiate these lurid and macabre tales which have emanated from Indian bands in BC over the past several years. Kamloops, Williams Lake, Sechelt, Cooper Island, Penelakut, others. Now that the truth has finally been established through the release of the report of the RCMP's 8-year investigation into BC Indian residential schools, will the federal government and the BC government do the right thing and stop funding and promulgating false claims about murdered children and unmarked graves? And will the University of Manitoba finally release the TRC documents which establish that the TRC's spurious Missing Children project did not produce the name of a single child who was ever missing and unaccounted for in a residential school anywhere in Canada? Nina Green, jaime.substack.com, Real Indigenous Report. Doug Ford dumps bottle of Crown Royal, lashing out at brand over moving jobs to the United States. This guy, I don't know, man. Like, you know, we talk about Danielle Smith being 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This guy is a half a step forward, 3 steps back. He's just a clown. And his relationship with Carney does not help him out at all, does it? So Doug Ford poured scorn on the makers of Crown Royal whiskey yesterday, dumping out a bottle before reporters in protest over the company's decision to shutter an Ontario bottling plant and move the jobs south of the border. And here is the video of him doing it.
You guys are about as dumb as a bag of hammers for doing this. So, you know something? I found a bottle, and I don't even drink, of Crown Royal, right? I see that Crown Royal. I saw it at home. So this is what I think about Crown Royal. That's what they could do. And I think everyone else should do the same thing. Start supporting companies that make whiskey here by Ontario people. That's what we need to do, is support each other. You know something? I'm going to make this even come out quicker because it's not coming out. I know Mayor Barry wants to lie on the floor right now with his mouth open. No thanks. But no, I wish I could get this out coming out quicker, but I'll stand here until it's all done. Anyways, folks, thank you. My brothers and sisters in uniform over at Crown Royal, I got your backs. We're going to be there to help you. And by the way, I'm going to send you the cleaning bill to Crown Royal, too. Anyways, folks, that's it. This might take a little while.
Swirl it like a tornado, boss.
Oh, you know what to do then. There, you want a shot? Go ahead.
Buffoon. This man is a buffoon. Here's why he's doing it. In a news release last week, Crown Royal maker Diageo PLC announced that it would be shutting down its bottling facility in Amherstburg, Ontario by February in order to move the work closer to some of its consumers in the United States. And that is absolutely their decision as a business entity to do so. We appreciate our dedicated Amherstburg employees for their contributions to Diageo and the Crown Royal brand. This was a difficult decision, but one that's crucial to improving the efficiency and resiliency of our supply chain network. Their president, Marsha McIntosh, said in a release, the product itself will still be mashed, distilled, and aged in Canada, the company said. In Gimli, Manitoba. And up there, they employ hundreds, if not thousands, of people. So way to go, Doug Ford. Maybe they'll decide now to move all of the production to the United States as well, because you, sir, are a complete and total clown. And I don't believe you don't drink Crown Royal. I don't believe any of this virtue signaling at all. As a matter of fact, you want to talk about virtue signaling? I got a little story for you guys. Last week or 2 weeks ago, when the Pride Parade organizers in Calgary were complaining about corporate sponsorship being down by 2/3 this year, was it 1/3? They lost a lot of money regardless, because a lot of businesses decided, hey, this is not good for business. We got to get out of this crap. Let's just stay out of this crap and focus on what we do for a living so we can keep our heads above water. So, according to my sources, radio, television, newspaper, the very next day after this story came out, all the local media, they all got together and they started saying, hey, this is awful. Pride Calgary has lost millions of dollars in contributions for their yearly event from corporate Canada. So we should probably get a GoFundMe page together and start supporting them. One radio station did that. And of course, because the others did not want to be left in the dirt, they started doing the same thing. And virtue signaling begets virtue signaling, begets virtue signaling. And suddenly every radio and television station in Calgary and newspapers were all in favor of funding from the public now, Pride Calgary. And in the meantime, you've got people begging in the streets for food. You've got people who cannot afford a place to live. You've got drug addicts strewn across downtowns all over the country. You've got people dying from disease, horrible disease. And what are these media entities getting behind? Pride parades, virtue signaling. They don't really mean it. There's a guy in Winnipeg. His name is Ace Burpee. He hosts a morning show at some top 40 radio station. I forget what it's called. Remember that? It was a tsunami that hit Japan like 10 or 15 years ago. Had nothing to do with Canada, Winnipeg, nothing at all. It's a terrible thing. Of course, you don't want to see people die. But really, I mean, what are we supposed to do about it? Contribute 10 or 15 bucks to the Red Cross. Well, the very next day, there were billboards all over the city of Ace Burpee in this position, praying. Pray for Japan. Like he gives a rat's ass about what happens in Japan. This is virtue signaling. They don't mean 90% of what they say. It's all about trying to evoke emotion in you and make you love them. That's all there is to it. And believe me when I tell you, you are looking right now at a media expert. I spent 35 years in that industry, and I absolutely know what it's all about and what they're trying to do to you. And if I'm you, I'm not listening to them anymore. Not at all. As a matter of fact, if you need to listen to music in your car, do it through your phone. Program it yourself or get satellite radio or something, because they don't have any of those annoying DJs on there. Just the music, that's all. But don't listen to local media. Don't read local media. They're worse than national media. As a matter of fact, I believe they're far more responsible for everything that's happened in the 5 or 6 years than national media is. They're bad too, don't get me wrong. But the local ones are the ones who actually get into your soul. Those are the ones you're listening to in the morning. Those are the ones that you wake up to in your bedroom. You hear that voice first thing in the morning. Don't let them in anymore. They're all liars. They're insincere. They have nothing good to say. This is not some vendetta either against the media, because I left that industry a long time ago, and I'm happy that I did, and I would never go back, even if I was starving in the street myself. I would never, because I could never, ever compromise myself like that. Ever. Now that I know everything. So you can't listen to them anymore. You can't watch them anymore. You can't read them anymore. You know, actually, there are some that aren't bad. Not completely compromised, at least not yet. I know that the Winnipeg Sun is doing what they can. I don't think they completely get it, but they get it 50% of the time, which is better than all of the others. We've got a police chief out in Ontario. His name is Jim McSween, and he is with the York Regional Police. And he says, because we're talking about this castle law, right? And what's happened in Ontario. And, you know, the guy waking up at 3:30 in the morning to an intruder, beats the crap out of the guy. The guy had a crossbow, apparently. So he beats the crap out of this guy, sends him to the hospital. He's the one who gets charged. Of course, the intruder got charged too. But really, if somebody breaks into your home, that's it. I'm sorry, but the gloves are off, and that person is now liable to get beaten or killed. They're taking their life in their hands by breaking into somebody else's home, as far as I'm concerned. Castle laws, we need them in Canada. Doug Ford did say that, and then he poured out the bottle of Crown. Idiot. But this guy, Jim McSween, he says, we know the best defense for most people is to comply. So if somebody breaks into your home and starts doing something awful to your wife and your children, you're supposed to comply. Sit there and watch if they tell you to do so. Here he is. Watch him.
Can make his own statement and his own mind up about that. What I would say is, as a police service, we'll follow the laws as they're written. If the laws change, we'll change with the laws. But as it stands, we know the best defense for most people is to comply. As you've just heard, a number of safety recommendations will allow for those that are victimizing members in the community to leave and not harm anyone. It sometimes can fall on deaf ears when members feel like they have to take matters into their own hands. And the only thing I'd say is, if we are going to rely on our community members to take matters into their own hands to solve this problem, we have all failed our community. I've been down at Queen's Park. I've provided comments on bail reform. So have many of my colleagues across the GTA. And here we are again talking about it. And it seems like in some cases, right, we have not moved the needle collectively, because this is not just a police issue. Unfortunately, when it becomes our issue, it's too late. So we need to do something about this issue around bail and about keeping those people off the streets that shouldn't be on the streets.
Well, I agree with what he said in the second part of his statement, but ultimately, comply. We know for most people, their best defense is to comply. No, I'm going to go down swinging, man. And because of the laws in this country and the way the police are dealing with all this, do you think maybe these criminals are now emboldened to keep doing what they're doing and maybe ramping it up even as well? Yeah. Here's something else from my media days. Last job I had, I was the morning show host at a news talk radio station in Winnipeg. It was owned and operated by Chorus Entertainment. And the police would do a daily briefing telling us what was going on. And I would listen along with the rest of the newsroom. And there were some things they told us not to say. We haven't contacted the families yet. Okay, that's legitimate. I guess maybe a family member doesn't want to hear that another family member died on the radio. They would rather hear it from a source like the police knocking on their door. Fair enough. But when you tell us a lie, don't expect us, at least when I was there, don't expect us to lie on your behalf. I happen to know that a young man was found dead in his car in the north end of the city through several sources of a fentanyl overdose. Police officer denied it. I kept asking the question over and over and over again. And then he said, "Don't get difficult, Davis." This was a police media spokesperson lying to my face and then threatening me if I went on the air with it. And I was told by management to not, because if you go against them, they won't tell us anything ever again. That is the left-wing corporate media. Having said that, I want to bring this story up here. This comes from publicly funded left-wing corporate CBC. Windsor house fire leaves 4 with serious injuries and leads to 1 arrest, officials. All right, so we'll read a little bit about this story here. Monday morning fire at a small home in Sandwich has left 4 people with serious injuries, Windsor police say. 1 of them has been arrested. 2 of the people, including the suspect, have since been sent to hospital in Hamilton for additional care. Windsor Fire and Rescue Services initially said at around 8:30 a.m. that 1 person was reported to be trapped in the Bloomfield Road home, while 2 others were being treated for burns. Roughly 10 minutes later, the fire service said 4 occupants of the home were being treated for injuries and that multiple emergency vehicles were on scene. Crews then brought the 4 people to hospital, the fire service said on social media. There is nothing in this story about the cause. Well, wait a minute. WFRS said at around 1:15 p.m. Monday that the investigation into the cause and origin of the fire was ongoing and that no more updates were expected until yesterday, and we haven't received any. Nothing has been reported in the left-wing corporate media further to that story. So here's Mario for the North.
Let's watch this. Something for you to investigate. There's an incident in Windsor this weekend where a guy poured gasoline on a family and lit them on fire. No details are being released, but guess where they're from? Don't mention my name, please. I couldn't find anything online, so I went on the police website, and sure enough, it says 4 injured, suspect arrested after a house fire. Pouring gasoline on a family and lighting them on fire, I guess is technically a house fire, but it's not very accurate, is it? But he's going to be facing these charges: attempted murder, arson, disregard for human life, break and enter, and forcible confinement. You see, whether the Liberal Party or Sean Fraser wants to admit it or not, this is worse than the Wild West. Break and enters are getting worse. They're becoming more common. As you see, people are now being lit on fire. 0, and I mean 0, news coverage on this.
No, not completely. They talked about the fire. The media is not your friend. Remember Queen Didulo? Remember her? She was doing these videos about how she's the real reigning queen of Canada. And then she started a kind of a cult compound in Saskatchewan near the Alberta border. Well, the RCMP have raided the Queen of Canada and arrested 16 people, including the Queen herself. And she tried to live stream as much of it as she could, and we do have a little bit of video of that.
It says, "You're under arrest. We have a warrant." They have a warrant for what? What kind of warrant do they have? Do they have a arrest warrant? What kind of warrant do they have? You have multiple types of warrant. plug in. Just trying to speed up the. Yeah, it's fine. Hi, that's okay, that's okay. That's all right. That's all right. Okay. Okay.
Leave the phone down. You're under arrest.
All right.
That's how it went. That was nothing. They came in with their armor on and their guns out. Now, I guess going into kind of a cultish situation, you probably would have to do that, right? Just in case. They found 3 replica guns there. 3 toy guns. And that's it. And I'm certain that they did their surveillance as well. They were probably flying around that. I think they were in an old school or something, privately owned now. Condemned even, maybe? I'm sure they did their surveillance, their due diligence. I'm sure that they flew a helicopter around the area for a while, checking to see if anybody was armed, probably coming up with nothing but being on the safe side. And now that those RCMP officers have raided and arrested Queen Didulo, they're free to head off to Universal Ostrich Farm, I'm sure. Ever heard of Integrity TO? Well, I hadn't earlier until about 2 o'clock this afternoon. I hadn't either, until about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Here they are here. The story is they emerged in the wake of their opposition to City Council's reckless initiative to erase the name Dundas from our city. Dundas Square is now some African thing I can't pronounce. This ill-conceived move was not only a costly distraction from more pressing priorities, but underscored a troubling truth. Our municipal leaders prioritize ideological agendas over delivering responsible governance and essential services to Torontonians. It was a glaring display of imprudence and disregard for the city's real need. Despite our 35,000-person petition, City Council inexplicably went ahead with the renaming initiative. This confirmed to residents across the city that the local government is neither safeguarding their best interests nor acting as responsible stewards for tax dollars. Instead, they continue to prioritize ideology over common sense. And here's one of the guys from Integrity TO talking about a new initiative that they just found out about. Watch
Thought the city of Toronto couldn't be more ideologically destroyed. Well, I got news for you. It's even worse. We just found out that there's now a new push inside the city bureaucracy that all employees should recite the African land acknowledgement on top of the Indigenous land acknowledgement, on top of declaring your pronouns at all city meetings. On top of that, city staff are now being asked to put the African land acknowledgement in their email signature. So Sankofa Square was just the symptom or one symbol of a much deeper, pervasive, institutional rot that is currently occurring at the city of Toronto. And we're now even hearing people on the inside who are sending us anonymous notes that they are conscientiously dissenting and refusing to participate in these radical rituals that have nothing to do with governance and building a healthy, thriving, and prosperous city. In fact, you can see from this note here, every single meeting is now starting with a 4-minute Indigenous and African land acknowledgement. Now you have to ask yourself, what is the cumulative cost of all that time across so many people in 1 year? We must be talking weeks of lost time for these empty performative rituals. And then, of course, we now see that it's in email signatures. And this has all happened on the watch of city councilors and activists who have completely captured government at this point. And so Integrity TO is now making a new demand of city council. If they are going to force Indigenous and African land acknowledgements on everybody, then it would be discriminatory to not include land acknowledgements for all the other historically aggrieved groups. And so therefore we are demanding that city council adopt land acknowledgements for the following: Jewish Canadians, Japanese Canadians, Italians, Chinese, Ukrainian, German Canadians, South Asian Canadians, Sikh Canadians, Muslims, dinosaurs, bees, taxi drivers, Irish Canadians, Polish Canadians, Eastern European Canadians, LGBTQ communities, and persons with disabilities. If City Hall does not implement land acknowledgements for the aforementioned aggrieved groups, then Integrity TO will be launching a complaint with the Provincial Integrity Commissioner and the Human Rights Tribunal. Thank you. Talk to you later.
Integrity TO. I love it. I'm going to have to get that guy on the show. Speaking of Sikhs, do you remember Sean Foyt? Of course you do. Christian singer who was touring across Canada and getting his permits canceled or not being granted permits at all in pretty much every city across the country. And of course, the left-wing corporate media was writing about him being a purveyor of MAGA and being a bad guy and spreading hate. Many of the left-wing freak politicians were yelling and screaming that from the rooftops. All he is a Christian performer spreading the word of God and Jesus wherever he goes. That's what he does. In Winnipeg, he was never granted a permit. He applied, but was denied by the city because of safety issues. They didn't go into detail about what those safety issues were. In Abbotsford, they said, yeah, we think that maybe counter-protesters and protesters would get together and there'd be a problem, and we don't want that problem. Now, that may be. But there is something called freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of religion, freedom of gathering. But not for Christians. If you're a Sikh, on the other hand, now I want to clarify before I put this out there that Sean Foyt has been on tour traveling across the world, the United States and Canada for the last 15 years. This is not the first time he's been in Canada. This is the first time that anybody has noticed him, thanks to probably the trans Tifas who made a point of making him famous. But there was an event in Winnipeg this past weekend that shut most of the downtown down from 8 a.m. Saturday until 8 p.m. on Sunday. That's most of the long weekend. And it's so Sikhs can gather in the street, parade and wave flags and have a good time. I have no problem with it. As a matter of fact, here's some video of it right now. Okay, that's enough. Now, we know that Sikhs and Hindus have been having problems in the last couple of years and have been threatening each other publicly. We know this. And they're not worried about safety issues, shutting down an entire major city's downtown for almost the entire Labor Day long weekend to grant them access to their religion and their festivities. And again, I have no problem with that. But if you can do that for 2 full days, you can't grant a 2 or 3 hour permit to a Christian singer? Just what the hell is going on in this country? What the hell is going on in the West? Look what happened in Scotland today. This is today. The Palestinian flag was raised outside of the Scottish government buildings. The Palestinian flag. Absolutely amazing. The Palestinian flag. Okay, so let me just take this down, move this up here. Scottish government halts cash for arms companies supplying Israel and flies Palestine flag. John Swinney announced a range of actions the Scottish government is to take in response to the unacceptable situation in Gaza. So let's desecrate our own country. You know, William Wallace would be ashamed. Anybody who fought for the freedom of their country, no matter when it was, 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, would be ashamed if they were able to see what's going on today. Completely. Have you liked and shared the show yet? If not, please go ahead and do that. Shane Wolf is, was a climate change guru, a junkie. This guy was all about designing new sustainable homes using solar panels or wind farms. He's from Whitehorse in the Yukon. But he's woken up in the last couple of years. And he went for a walk in the woods in Nova Scotia the other day.
So I made a video the other day about what I thought was peak insanity with the government of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick saying they're going to fine people 25 grand for walking in the woods like I am now. No chance of starting a fire doing that. I could see if you're riding a quad or smoking or something. But also fishing, you're not allowed to go fishing in the woods. I thought that was peak insanity. But yesterday I saw an article that said they're also spraying glyphosate in the forest. And glyphosate will kill everything around it except organisms that are engineered to withstand glyphosate. So basically you're making a tinderbox and destroying the forest. And what is the purpose of that? Is it to spread a climate emergency narrative? Or I also saw that they lifted a moratorium on mining uranium. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. But anyone who's heard of Nikola Tesla, the man who gave us our modern world with electricity, he's got like 300 patents on, things that use electricity. He said think in terms of frequency and vibration. He basically died penniless because he was trying to give the world free energy. There's a great documentary I recommend to everyone. It's called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. Everybody who's tried to produce or provide free energy devices and commercialize them seems to end up dead. And I'll show you even my neighbor growing up, a good friend of mine, his dad invented one of these things in the 80s, sold it for a hell of a lot of money, put a patent on it, and he knew that this was it's not a good idea to hang on to this thing and try and, bring it forward. But imagine if we had free energy devices, this slave system would be done. It would be finished. And that's the reason we don't have free energy devices. So this whole thing about mining uranium continues the slave system. Completely unnecessary. We need to move forward. We need to do better. I hope you share this because everything we are being told is about control. The solutions to climate change, they're telling us, they're about control. What they're doing is about control. It's not about stopping climate change. In case you don't know me, I have literally gone bankrupt trying to stop climate change by teaching people how to future-proof their home and become self-sufficient, and that is the exact opposite of what this system wants.
Half and half, right? He's right about a couple of things, and it's interesting. Do we have an energy source, or is there an energy source that's just beyond our reach that could power the world for free. Maybe. I've heard some wild stories. I'm not going to share them here, but I've heard some wild stories about something on the moon. Now, if that's true, that completely and totally brings down the entire economy of the world. Understand? It's the same with a cure for cancer. If they came up with an actual cure for cancer where you just took a pill and you were cured, that entire industry would come crashing down. They are not looking for a cure for cancer. They're perpetuating it. They're looking for treatments for cancer, maybe, more humane treatments, but they're not looking for a cure. As a matter of fact, anybody who has come forward with anything resembling a cure mysteriously dies somehow. They're protecting their own wealth, their massive wealth. And until the system comes down, or until we all wake up, and now I'm going big time, the song remains the same, my friends. There's a vaccine mandate freeze in Florida. Here is the Surgeon General there, Thomas Ladapo.
Florida Department of Health, in partnership with the governor, is going to be working to end all vaccine mandates in Florida law. All of them. All of them. All of them. Every last one of them. Yeah. Every last one of them. All of them. Every last one of them. Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery. Okay? Who am I as a government or anyone else, or who am I as a man standing here now to tell you what you should put in your body? Who am I to tell you what your child should put in your body? I don't have that right. Your body is a gift from God. What you put into your body, is because of your relationship with your body and your God. I don't have that right. Government does not have that right. They want you to believe they have that right. And unfortunately, they've been successful. They've been successful.
So the way Ron DeSantis put it earlier, he said, look, if a 14-year-old girl, he said, I'm thinking about this on the weekends. This is how they come up with their ideas. I was sitting there thinking about this on the weekend, and I thought, there's a 14-year-old girl who's been in a car accident and she needs life-saving surgery and she doesn't have her vaccine for this, that, or the other. And so the doctors or the medical team would say, well, if she doesn't have the vaccine, we're not going to treat her. Seriously. And believe me when I tell you that that's a thing everywhere. If you don't have a certain and we saw that in COVID. I mean, how many people died because they wouldn't get that stupid thing? They died of something completely different, heart failure. So they're ending that in the free state of Florida, and I think that's great. Tonight on the extension, and if you're not a member, you go to shadowdavis.com, become one, SHADOEDAVIS.com. Become a VIP member. You get the extension, you get the extra content. Tonight we're doing Inside mRNA Vaccines. The real story. This is a movie documentary that came out in the last couple of days. And we're going to watch it tonight together on the extension for you Nighthawks. Now, if you are a member of the website, but you can't stay up that late. You don't want to watch it live. You can always watch it tomorrow, the weekend, whenever you want. It will be there for you whenever you want it to be. Tonight, inside MRNA Vaccines, the movie, on the extension on shadowdavis.com. Thank you for being here tonight. The last thing I have to let you guys know tonight is tomorrow on the show, Raylan Fox will be our guest. She'll be on live with us. This will be the first time for her. First time I met Raylan was 3 years ago, I think. And she spoke in front of a very large crowd gathered at the Manitoba legislature regarding COVID restrictions, all of the mandates and whatnot. Very shy young lady at that point. I remember walking up to her and saying, "It's so nice to meet you. What a great speech." Gave her a hug. She ran the other way. Since then, she has become bolder, stronger. And she's been putting out this series on video. Those books aren't in my kids' schools. There's 11 parts to this. She's now being sued for doing that. She has put out some incredibly vital information for parents, grandparents, children out there. And as we've seen in Alberta in the last couple of days, we can do this. We can get these books out of the schools and the public libraries. They're not suitable for young children. Danielle Smith is doing that in Alberta, which makes me, and I'm sure Raylan, very happy. So Raylan's going to be on the show tomorrow night. Why does she do this anyway? I mean, she's a young mom, 4 kids, great husband. She doesn't need to do this. She doesn't need the aggravation, but she does it anyway. If you have any questions for Raylan about why she does this, about how she does this, how she gets her information, you can go ahead and drop me a line at shadowdavis@gmail.com. You can email me, or you can send me a message on Messenger, and I will forward that question to her so we can talk about it on the show tomorrow night. Raylan Fox joins the show tomorrow night. I'm very excited about tomorrow night. Don't forget to like and share this. You guys get it out to as many people as you possibly can. And that is it for the show tonight. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And I'll see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock with our guest, Raylan Fox. Nighthawks, I will see you in 2 minutes. Bye for now.